May 14th, 1971, a young Belarusian man had just missed the bus and was walking through the streets of Belarus, a homemade noose in hand, looking for a place to hang himself. And he saw a local, 19-year-old Ludmila Androlov walking along. He then decided that he wouldn't be the one to die that night. Thus began a search that would last 16 years, lead to 14 innocent people convicted and over 55 dead. Gennady mikhasevich was described by those who knew him as a wonderful husband who showered his wife with gifts and an excellent worker who was the master mechanic of a few local workshops. He was also a commander in local militia and served as a volunteer deputy for law enforcement. He wasn't so well regarded in his youth. He was taciturn and withdrawn, and was mocked for his alcoholic father who physically abused his mother. After school, he graduated and was drafted into the Navy, though he was later discharged due to hepatitis. Upon returning home, he had discovered that his girlfriend had left him. While contemplating suicide, he saw Ludmila Androlov and thought, quote, "Why should I choke because of a woman? I'd rather strangle someone myself," end quote. She was the first of 55 that he would kill. Androlov's body was found 2 days later and thought to be the result of a robbery gone wrong. Investigator Laprovich disputed this and thought this was the result of a homicidal maniac. The investigators were removed from the investigation, and a man named Glushikov was found guilty of Luduma's murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. He was the first of 14 men falsely imprisoned. 5 months later, at the end of October, Mikhasevich struck again in the village of Ruba, killing another girl. Then later that evening, on the outskirts of a nearby city, he attacked his third victim, who was heard screaming for help by local schoolchildren, who came and investigated with a flashlight. Mikhasevich, seeing the light, fled, and in the struggle, the girl who was attacked bit his arm, allowing the investigators to get a sample of his blood and determine the type. She was only one of 2 victims who survived an encounter with him. Unfortunately, the attack in Ruba wasn't connected to the attack in the outskirts of the city. The news that he had attempted to use to strangle his victim was thrown away. This incompetence displayed was far from an exception, and one of the many reasons Mikhasevich was able to kill for over a decade. His 4th attempt succeeded next year in April. He attacked for a 5th time in July that year. A nearby resident said she saw 3 young men with a German Shepherd nearby the crime at the scene. 3 men who were nearby were arrested who were walking in a nearby suburb with a German Shepherd puppy instead of a full-grown dog. Investigators threatened them with the death penalty if they didn't confess. Kobolev, pictured here, confessed and received 15 years. His friend Pashikev received 12, and their friend Yashenko received 2.5 years. The next year, he graduated from Gorda College of Agricultural Mechanization. The same year, he got married and moved to Solinki. In 1975, he killed at least 2 more women. From 1976 to 1978, he killed at least 4 more. In 1978 and 1980, at least 1 person was killed each year. In 1981, he purchased the red ZAZ-068M car, which revolutionized his murders. Instead of walking around or using public transport, he can now pick up hitchhikers from across the province and drive them to a secluded place to strangle them. He killed 3 people that year. The next summer, he killed 5. At this point, the police had finally pieced together that the murders were the work of a single person who, according to the witnesses, drove a red ZAZ-068M. Mikhasevich, as a volunteer deputy, was enlisted in the search for the murder. He would spend 3 years stopping and questioning people in the same car he drove for the crimes he committed. While helping the police, he was able to understand how the police were searching for him and stay one step ahead the whole time. This gave him the confidence to kill more than ever. In 1985, he claimed 12 victims. This sent confidence in law enforcement plummeting, people who were scared to go out at night, leading to the USSR sending in federal law enforcement officers. This panicked Mikhasevich, who, in order to throw law enforcement off their trail, he handwrote a letter to a newspaper from an organization he made up called Patriots of Vitebsk, which included details of recent murders that only the murderer would know. He then wrote notes that he left with the bodies, giving credit to the Patriots of Vitebsk for the murderers. An attempt to throw the investigators off his scent became his undoing. The federal investigators now had multiple samples of his handwriting directly attached to the crimes he committed. The investigators called in 30 handwriting experts from across the Soviet Union. An investigation of almost the entire adult population of the region began. They ended up checking a total of 556,000 documents like passports, receipts, vehicle registration forms, governmental complaints, looking for a match. When looking over a repair order for her car, a graphologist noticed that the mechanic's signature matched the writing on the notes. They investigated Mikhasevich further, and they found that when he wrote in a hurry, his handwriting matched those of the letter and notes. When interrogated, he confessed and passionately recounted the details, making jokes about the investigators' incompetence and his victims. He was flattered by the attention. It came to light that many of the gifts he had given his wife were actually themes from his victims. He said he killed women because he resented them and it gave him sexual pleasure to strangle them to death. He had a quick, perfunctory trial. He refused to file a petition for clemency. 17 years after he killed his first victim, he was executed at Pashenkov Castle by firing squad in 1988.